Hi, I'm Emily Grosvenor. We're here at the Terroir Creative Writing Festival. This is the 9th annual festival happening in McMinnville, Oregon. The festival's been growing each and every year. I've been involved for about 5 years, and it's grown in scope and influence throughout those years. It's been really personally thrilling for me to just see just the vast age ranges and backgrounds and the genres represented. We now have 3 different workshops happening at one time. I always tell people it's the best deal around. You know, for $50 you can basically pick and choose from a number of regionally and nationally renowned writers who work right here in Oregon. I feel like we're really privileged to be in a state where the literary community kind of supports each other and supports itself, so that we know about these writers, and so that when we have that moment at the beginning of the year where we're like, who should we bring in? It's always kind of an embarrassment of riches. Like, we have a lot to choose from. I really hope people are having a wonderful time at the festival. I know I am. I'm missing some right now. Our keynote speaker, our first one, Tracy Daugherty, we just finished up a session with him. He wrote a biography of Joan Didion, which I think he just sold a ton of copies out there. People are really excited about that. And he was speaking about what it's like to, I think fundamentally what he was talking about was developing the worldview of a writer and learning to kind of learning how to curate details and images as you walk through your life, so that when you return to your desk to interpret what you have experienced, you can do it with a great level of artistry and insight. He was calling that process magpiety, which he, I forget the 2 writers, that Philip Lopate was one of the writers he referenced, who was in turn referencing another writer on this process of magpiety, what it's like to be that bird that's kind of like attracted to shiny objects and who kind of collects those shiny objects, returns to the nest and kind of lays out the shiny objects amidst their own creation. And now, right now, I was in the session with Gina Oxner, who's a writer I've admired for a really long time, not least because she has 5 kids and has somehow managed to write and be successful as a novelist, writing really extraordinary fiction while also raising these 5 kids. Kind of blows my mind. So she writes magical realism, and I've reviewed a couple of her books: the Russian Handbook of Dream and Flight, the Russian Dream Book of Hand and Flight. It's been a couple years since I reviewed it, but she's you've never read anything like her work before. Like, she's got a really distinctive voice and a distinctive way of viewing the world, which isn't. I believe that it feels informed by her life, but it doesn't feel realistic. It's definitely got a dreamy, magical quality to it, which is so very refreshing when you're looking for new writers. And then later today, I'll be speaking to. I hope I can make it until 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock is when my energy starts to crash. But I'm hoping I'll be able to kind of energize myself a little bit from my own session, which is on how to attract an audience for your writing alongside the work. So how to engage an audience while you are creating a work of writing. One of the new things that we're offering this year, we have a self-publishing lounge. So we have invited very successful local authors who have published in the self-publishing arena into a lounge that's happening concurrently with the festival. So the cool thing about these writers is that they've all taken very distinctive and different paths to the publishing process. I think people get really overwhelmed with self-publishing. There's just a ton of options out there. Even in traditional publishing, there's a lot of options. And part of the challenge of the writer's path is, how am I going to do it? Like, what is my path? And it helps to talk to people who have kind of walked that walk, and more importantly, made a lot of mistakes along the way. You can save yourself a lot of time talking to these folks. So we've got Karen Hunsberger. She put out a book, War Letters from her father. These really beautiful letters from World War II that she published, and she's had 2 successful Kickstarter campaigns. And then we have Stephen Long, who put out a novel called There's a Somebody. And he also was successful on Kickstarter. The way they published was vastly different from the way they generated the funds for their publications. But I would highly encourage anyone who's kind of curious about that process to go there and kind of learn from people who are really excited to share about their experiences. My favorite thing about Terroir this year is actually Moss Drake, who is the founder, Barbara Drake's son. Moss, last year, just of his own volition, was drawing illustrations of the workshops that he presented, and afterwards he was so kind to send them to me, and I sent them out to everybody in the emails. And so this year I was like, can we please just have him come and illustrate Terroir? I think it's the greatest thrill as a speaker to see your presentation presented in kind of a pictorial, I don't want to call it cartoonish because it doesn't look like a cartoon, but just an illustrated version of the talks. It's fun to see just how someone who's visually oriented interprets what's being said on the stage.
Hello, my name is Tracy Daugherty. I'm here in McMinnville, Oregon at the Terroir Creative Writing Festival. I heard about the festival from Lisa Olin, who is a writer and a writing student from the past that I knew, and let me know about this wonderful festival going on today. I'm here to talk and meet with other writers. I was the morning keynote speaker at the festival and wanted to talk today about inspiration, since it was the first thing in the morning and people are going to be spending the day writing and thinking about writing. So I wanted to talk about what gets us going. And for me, many things are inspiring. They can serve as subjects for writing. Music is an important inspiration for me because, like language, music is full of rhythm and pacing, and those are the kinds of things that tend to get me started when I sit down and face that blank page. So I wanted to talk about that and all the many subjects and the ways that we put pieces of things that attract us together to form our writing. I began writing as a child, really, but writing seriously and publishing about 30 years ago, and it was a much different landscape then. I think it was easier for writers to break into publication then because books were still kind of a commercial viable commodity. There were bookstores, and I used to love to hang out in bookstores, and now, of course, the brick and mortar stores are vanishing. And more publishing is going online. It's becoming digital. Print is under fire and vanishing in many ways. So I think it's a very complicated landscape now for writers. And one of the ironies is that while there is a great deal of self-publishing more than ever, I think, and many opportunities online for writers to publish their work, so in some ways there are more opportunities for writers to get their language out. But because there's such a glut of information, I think that a lot of it gets lost, and more traditional avenues toward publication are disappearing. So I think it's a very tough time for writers. And as a result, writers are more self-conscious now, it seems to me, about what kinds of subjects they should choose, what not to write about. And I think that's a kind of a scary and challenging moment for us. As a writer, I don't try to censor myself. I don't try to leave anything out because I think it would be a controversial subject or that it would not go over well with publishers or readers. So I don't really believe in checking myself. And I don't really think about the market that much, but I do think it's a tough time for younger writers. If I were able to step into a time machine at this particular moment and go back into the past, I think if I had that opportunity, where I would go would be not too far. I would go to Oklahoma, probably in the 1920s or 30s, the Depression years, when my grandfather was a young man. I told the story in the morning keynote that my grandfather was a politician, and he wrote his own speeches as a very young man, and that was one of my first inspirations for writing, was watching him write and then talk. And I would love to have spoken to my grandfather when he was a young man, and he was never given the opportunity to go to school in any advanced way, so he was self-educated largely, and yet he had such a beautiful grasp of language and speech, and I would ask him how he came to know the power of language and how he developed himself. I was lucky to go to school and had wonderful teachers, and so I had a lot of help along the way. But I would love to go back to that original inspiration that he had and where it came from in his world. One thing that struck me many years ago, and this was after my grandfather had passed away, I was in Oklahoma visiting other family members and happened to be exposed to the sermons of an African-American preacher in a black church in a small town in Oklahoma. And it sounded to me like my grandfather's old speeches, the rhythm, the music of that language. So I would love to know where all the bits and pieces of my grandfather's language came from. And I think some of it must have come from the small town black churches in Oklahoma. Some of it came from the political rhetoric of his day. Some of it came from his own family. So I would love to go back in time and talk to him about that and find out, where did the music of your language come from? Because it's become my language as well.
Hi, I'm Heather Arndt Anderson, and I'm here at Chemeketa Community College for the Terroir Creative Writing Festival. I'm the first food writer that they've ever invited to come speak at the festival, and so that's very exciting, although I still don't feel like I belong in any literary events because as far as I'm concerned, what I write is not literary at all. It's just nerdy technical stuff that I try to make somewhat entertaining, but I'm very flattered that they have invited me to be here. I found out about this writing festival when Lisa Olin Harris invited me to participate. I don't pay that much attention to many of the literary events around town because, like I mentioned, I don't feel like the work I do is literary, and so I tend to go to more food type culinary events than writing events, and so this is exciting marriage, I think, especially being in wine country, to see what creative writers are doing and maybe how I can be part of that community. The first creative writing I did as a child was single subject food writing. Actually, that was a poem about an orange, was my first piece of published writing, and I was in like 3rd grade. Yeah, I've always been interested in cooking. I've always been interested in ingredients and food, and I didn't have enough to eat when I was a kid always because I grew up below the poverty line, and so that definitely informed my obsession with food. And cooking was always a hobby of mine. And then after I had a child, I had to retire from my career as a field biologist. I was able to spend much more time focusing on cooking and taking my love of writing about food in a more professional direction. My kitchen is my safe space. I live in a 126-year-old farmhouse, and we recently remodeled our kitchen to be more reflective of the era in which the house was built, although with modern conveniences. I don't have to go haul my water from a well, thank goodness. But the way I have it built, it's like a U-shaped island, so it's my little command center, and it also, it's like I'm guarded from, the rest of the household by my counter. It is a creative space. It's where I do a lot of my best thinking. It's where I do a lot of my daydreaming and just rumination about pieces I could write or articles I might want to work on, topics I'd like to research. And I do use it for some scientific exploration, like testing recipes is technical as it is creative. In fact, more technical, I think. The scientific method is definitely applied when cooking. So yeah, it feels like I get to have the best parts of myself all together in the same space when I'm in the kitchen cooking. If I could go back in time to any place, and this is going to sound very pedestrian, but I would go to Portland, Oregon, stay in Portland, Oregon in 1905, and I would talk to Lillian Tingle, who was the food columnist for the Oregonian. They had invited her from where she was teaching domestic science to come head up this column and to, actually, no, that's not true. She was the director of the YWCA's cooking program and was started writing for the Oregonian at the same time. But she also created the home ec curricula that Portland Public Schools taught. She developed the criteria in the teens, and it was still being taught, and still is being taught today. And I was such a huge fan of hers, and I've done a lot of research on her. I would love to tell her that confirmed spinsters can make plenty of waves in this world, and I would just like her to know that she indirectly taught me how to cook.
Hello, my name is Dr. Jose Angel Araguz, and I am a professor of English and Creative Writing at Linville College, and I'm here at the Terroir Creative Writing Festival. It's my first year teaching at Linville, and so it's my first year living in McMinnville, and but I lived in Eugene, Oregon for about 7 years, and so in another life, and so I'm used to the welcoming nature of the Oregon poetry community, which I'm happy to find myself in again. So I found my way to the Terroir Festival through Lisa Weidman, and then via online correspondence with Lynn Otto and Lisa Olin Harris. All very welcoming and encouraging to get me here. The workshop I'm doing here at Terroir is called Creating the Moon, but Poetic Authority in Hybrid Forms. For me, my idea of hybridity isn't anything new. It's something steeped in traditions, and one of the traditions that fed into my workshop was Japanese poetic forms. We covered haiku, zuihitsu, which is a kind of poetic diary, haibun, which is a combination of prose and haiku as well. And I conducted writing exercises that had people writing haiku as well as prose paragraphs about the moon, all with this idea of there's this quote from William Stafford where he talks about the moon you are describing is the moon you are creating, and that's what inspired the whole theme of my workshop. And so basically between haiku and prose, people handled the moon in different ways, and so we had a conversation around that. And then we had I shared a couple of different examples from the Pillow Book of Seishanagan, as well as haibun from contemporary writers, and my own work as well. And about how those ideas informed my own work, but also how those ideas could be, that we were talking about, can be used in their own writing as people left. And I like making sure that people leave my classes with tools in hand. So survival tips for Terroir. This is my first time being at the festival, but I think in general, find quiet spots. Lisa Olin Harris was very kind and let us know for introverts, hey, where you can kind of go and be on your own for a little bit, get some respite. Carry protein bars, because you never know when you're going to get hungry and you're going to be in between things. And bring paper. Like, they provide a little bit of paper, but I get fussy. Like, I either want my notebook or I want my clipboard for notes. So those are the kinds of things I would advise. And I'd say that if you're just attending, don't be afraid to tell someone that you like their workshop. That's always a treat. As a presenter, I'm like, it means the world. And if you're participating, always say thank you, because it means a lot to me to have people in the room engaging with me during my session. So I think those are my tips.
Hi, my name is Mike Paull. I'm a local yokel living around here out in Whiteson, and I've always wanted to attend the Terroir Writing Festival, and today I finally made it to one, and I am not disappointed. It is great. There's so many great writers out there, and I'm impressed by all of them. So I'm easy to please, but these people are awesome. Tracy Daugherty was the keynote speaker today, and that man is inspirational. He is one of the better writers I've ever encountered in my life. His personality was unbelievable, and he can lead by inspiration. And that was his talk. And boy, that guy's awesome. Yes, if I had my druthers as far as being somewhere after a voyage in a time machine, I would go back to 1968, and I would be in Toledo, Ohio, and I would be where I was at the time, because I had the world's greatest life back then at that point. But there was a lot of problems going on in the world, yet for me it was the most awesome time I was ever experienced, and I don't know that I'd be able to change anything, which that's the part that I like. I wouldn't change anything.
Hello, my name is Marjorie Sandor, and I'm here at the Terroir Writing Conference at Chemeketa in McMinnville, Oregon. My workshop that I just finished doing was on the idea of the uncanny and all that it has to offer writers of creative work, fiction, poetry, and nonfiction. And I heard about Terroir from Lisa Olin Harris, who used to be a student at a program I taught in at Pacific Lutheran University, and also has deep roots in Corvallis. So we've connected over those things. And she invited me. If I met someone who had never been to Terroir, I would tell them that it is extremely welcoming and easy to enter the world. From the minute we got here, it just felt like family. So this is going to sound like I want to be in the series Outlander, but I don't, because I actually know that being in that time and place, and I haven't actually seen the series, but I am obsessed with Scotland. And I've been there now 7 times in my life, and I've taken up Celtic rhythm guitar, and my fantasy is actually not to be transported into the past, but to be transported into the future, where I am a better guitarist than I am now, and despite my great age, I am welcomed into a Scottish music session at a little bar I happen to know about in Glasgow called the Ben Nevis. And among the 14 kids and the old drummer at the table, there I am, wailing away on that guitar, and I know every tune.